show, recently in a leaked conversation, Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif indicated that John Kerry gave him covert intel about Israeli operations in Syria. This is a story that we've been paying a lot of attention to, and we need to continue to pay attention to it. Here now to help us break that down is senior reporter for the Washington Free Beacon, Adam Credo. Adam, good morning.
Hey there.
So let's get into this story. I mean, you've been so on top of it in your reporting. This has been sort of in and out of the headlines the past couple of weeks. But I think that there's a chance we should be paying more attention to it. This seems to me like a political scandal in its purest forms. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but it's also not surprising to me that the media is, for the most part, ignoring it and also in many ways taking the State Department at face value when they kind of dismiss it and say this is not a story you should be paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, I mean, yeah, that's right. So the State Department said, you know, this didn't happen, or if it did happen, it happened at a time that was appropriate. Now we're hearing from the Iranians themselves that this actually did, in fact, happen. You know, we heard last week from Rich Goldberg that he thinks that Kerry's, clearances should at least be suspended for the time being until some sort of an investigation can take place. What type of action on the ground would you like to see in response to this?
Well, I can tell you what's being bandied about. Certainly on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, senators also have called for an investigation for Kerry to at least testify before lawmakers in Congress and come explain himself before them. I think that people also could try to push for the State Department, the Inspector General over there to launch its own investigation into Kerry. Look, these are serious allegations, and for the State Department to kind of punt on them and say, this is not something that we should be spending time on. I think that's really the wrong approach. If he did nothing wrong, why not investigate it and clear him and stop at least Republican lawmakers for calling for him to be fired or resign? They could very easily put it to bed.
Very true. We've seen a bunch of letters coming out of the Republican Senate caucus, at least asking for some clarity on all of this. So, I mean, beyond exactly what's going on with John Kerry and Iran right now, I mean, he's always had a fairly close relationship with diplomats over there. What is happening more generally with the United States State Department's relationship with Iran? Because it seems like this scandal is happening sort of at a pivotal moment for them, just as they're continuing to develop key aspects of their relationship under the Biden administration.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It does come at a very sensitive time, and people have even speculated, I don't know if this is true, that that tape was leaked intentionally, just as these negotiations are taking place to kind of soften the approach of the U.S., at least soften the approach of the U.S. towards Zarif himself, who is still the lead negotiator on the nuclear deal. Look, we're hearing rumors of a hostage deal that could be trading Iran cash, potentially billions in exchange for the release of American hostages who are still in prison there. We're also seeing that they're inching closer to a deal itself, that is the U.S. in some form getting back into that 2015 nuclear accord, most likely with significant sanctions relief for the Iranians. I think it's important to look at that Zarif tape, that leaked audio where he said that Kerry informed him of the covert Israeli airstrikes. Zarif also said something very interesting in there about negotiations. He likened it to a soccer game. He said that Iran was down 6-0, and that nuclear deal put them back 6-6. It tied them essentially with the rest of the world. That is a hint of the desperation that the Iranians had when negotiating that original deal, and the desperation that they likely have still to see the U.S. get back into it and unwind those tough economic sanctions. The Trump administration, I think very smartly, amped up all of these sanctions, and more than we even knew at the time. In the last 2 years of the Trump administration, those sanctions essentially bankrupted the regime. They went from about 130 billion in cash reserves to about 4 billion in cash reserves. That's virtually nothing. So they were crippling. And I think that's why we've seen the Iranians so early come back to the bargaining table. They really desire that sanctions relief so the hardline regime can stay afloat.
Right. Well, I mean, so coming back to this issue of the bargaining table of this, game of cards between the United States and Iran. I mean, also in these leaked tapes that you reported on, we heard Zarif saying that he doesn't actually believe that Iran and the United States will ever have a friendly relationship. The United States under President Joe Biden seems to be right now walking into a situation where they're saying, fine, take everything you want. You don't think we'll ever have a friendly relationship. You're endangering our good relationship with Israel, and maybe that has something to do with Kerry, and maybe it doesn't. But we'll give you everything you want. You'll give us nothing in exchange. Just this past weekend, I believe it was, on state TV, the Iranians played a video of the United States Capitol building being blown up. I think the question that I continue to come back to here is, what is the Biden administration's incentive to deal in such friendly measure with the Iranian regime?
Look, I mean, to be honest, I think in many ways it's hubris. In 2015, they said we want this deal and we'll do anything to get it. I think you'll remember very well, and probably your viewers as well, in the last several weeks and months of those negotiations, the U.S. pretty much rolled back its negotiating position on many of the key items. That is, not regulating Iran's ballistic missile program. That is, legitimizing key portions of Iran's nuclear program, its nuclear enrichment program, allowing them to install advanced centrifuges, all the things that really spin uranium up very quickly and enrich it to levels needed for a bomb. The U.S. walked that position back significantly. And look, these guys are still very angry that Trump walked away from that deal, said that, look, it wasn't working. The Iranians were still marching towards a nuclear weapon anyway, and we're going to take the opposite approach of putting sanctions on. They've come back and pretty much wholeheartedly, because of their ideology of saying that we think that we can bring Iran into the community of nations despite all evidence otherwise, we're going to move forward with this deal. So that's what I mean when I say it's hubris. They're very much looking to legitimize that position and say, look, we did it then and we can do it again.
I mean, it just seems interesting, a position to take. We did it again with limited success, and we're going to do the same thing, but more now, and see what happens. I mean, quickly before we have to go, Adam, you've been following this subject for years. What do you think happens? How does this play out if the Biden administration proceeds on this course?
Frankly, I think we're going to see the U.S. go back into the deal. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. And I think many of those sanctions are going to be unwound. I'm actually a believer in the Iranian state-controlled press. I've said this for years, that even though they publish propaganda, they also tell the truth. So I would look to them to see all of these sanctions relief that are probably coming down the pike. It's going to be billions and billions of dollars. And I can assure you the Iranians will celebrate that way before the administration here admits it to us at the State Department.
Wow. Well, I mean, Adam, thanks so much for weighing in this morning. We'll keep searching for answers about exactly what the Biden administration is really hoping to see from this situation, because I'll tell you, to me, it seems continually unclear. I will talk to you soon, Adam. Thanks so much.
Always.
Coming up, we'll continue to bring you news of the day here on Just the News AM. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you in just a few.